The warning siren screamed through the Galactic Council chambers for the first time in 300 years. Every screen in the massive hall blazed red with the same impossible message. Something had emerged from dark space near the terminus gate, and the sensors could not explain what they were seeing. Ambassador Velrus of the Valexian Empire stood from her crystalline seat, her silver skin reflecting the emergency lights. Around her, the other council members stirred with confusion and fear. The Kroll warriors reached for weapons that were not there. The Ashanti, beings of living crystal, chimed in distress. The bureaucrats of the Zenith Collective frantically typed on their data tablets. "Show us the readings," Velrus commanded. Her voice carried the weight of 5 centuries of diplomatic service. The central hologram flickered to life. What it showed made no sense. A ship floated in the darkness of space, but it was wrong in ways that hurt to perceive. The vessel seemed to exist in multiple places at once, its edges blurring between dimensions. Energy signatures surrounded it that matched no known technology in the galaxy. "Identify the vessel," ordered Commander Thrak, the Kroll military representative. His forearms crossed over his massive chest. The AI system hesitated, something it was not programmed to do. Then words appeared that sent a chill through the ancient hall. "Vessel identified UESC Prometheus. Human registry. Last known location, Sol system. Status: missing for 823 standard years." Silence fell like a hammer. The word human had not been spoken in council chambers for centuries. Humanity was a ghost story now, a cautionary tale told to newly spacefaring species. They had been the stubborn ones, the proud ones who had rejected the council's offer of protection and guidance. They had taken their few primitive ships and vanished into the darkness beyond the galactic rim, never to be heard from again. Most species assumed they had died out there in the black, killed by the 1,000 dangers that lurked between stars. Some said they had destroyed themselves in their typical human fashion, with wars and weapons. Others believed they had simply given up and returned to their homeworld to live out their days in isolation. No one had expected them to return. "This must be a mistake," said Representative Quorum of the Zenith Collective, his 3 eyes blinking rapidly. The human ship could not have survived 8 centuries in deep space. Their technology was primitive. They barely had faster-than-light capability. "The sensors do not lie," Velrus said quietly. "That is a human vessel. The question is what it has become." The council debated for hours, as was their way. Protocols had to be followed, committees had to be formed, risk assessments had to be completed. But in the end, curiosity and duty won. A first contact team was assembled, the best and bravest from each species. They would board the human ship and discover its secrets. Captain Theron of the Kroll led the team. He was a veteran of 100 boarding actions, a warrior who had fought pirates and rebels across a dozen star systems. But as his shuttle approached the Prometheus, he felt something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. The human ship grew larger in the viewport, but its size seemed to shift and change. One moment it appeared small enough to fit in a docking bay. The next it seemed to stretch for kilometers. The hull was made of materials that the shuttle's sensors could not identify, metals that seemed to drink in light rather than reflect it. "Prepare for docking," Theron ordered. His voice did not waver, but his primary hand gripped his weapon tighter. The docking procedure should have been impossible. The Prometheus had no compatible airlock, no docking ports that matched current galactic standards. Yet when the shuttle approached, an opening simply appeared in the hull, perfectly sized and positioned. The team exchanged nervous glances but proceeded. They had their orders. Inside, the ship was a maze of corridors that seemed to extend further than the exterior dimensions allowed. The walls glowed with soft bioluminescent light, though no power source was visible. The air was breathable, the temperature comfortable, and everything was clean as if the ship had launched yesterday rather than 8 centuries ago. They found no crew. No bodies, no signs of struggle or disaster. The ship felt more like a temple than a vessel, silent and waiting. Their scanners picked up energy readings from deeper in the ship, toward what the layout suggested was the bridge. The bridge doors opened at their approach, sliding apart without sound. The room beyond was circular, filled with stations and displays that used no technology the team recognized. And in the center, standing as if she had been waiting for them, was a human woman. She wore a uniform of deep black, marked with symbols and insignia that meant nothing to the council species. Her skin was pale, her hair dark and cut short in a military style, but it was her eyes that made Theron take a step back. They reflected light like mirrors, and in their depths he saw stars that did not exist in any known galaxy. "Welcome to the Prometheus," she said in perfect galactic standard, though her lips barely moved. Her voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "I am Captain Arya Chen of the United Earth Space Command. I apologize for the delay in our return. The journey took longer than we expected." She smiled, and it was the smile of someone who had seen things that would break a normal mind. "We need to talk," she continued. "All of you. The entire council. Because something is coming and you are not ready for it. None of you are. But we are." She raised her hand and reality bent around her fingers like water around stone. "Let me show you what humanity found in the darkness." The quarantine station orbited Zenith Prime like a steel moon, filled with the best scientists and medical experts the galaxy could provide. Captain Arya Chen sat in the center of an examination chamber, patient and still while dozens of scanners mapped every molecule of her body. The results made no sense, and that terrified the experts more than any disease or contamination could have. Dr. Salix, the chief medical officer and a renowned Ashanti physician, studied the data with growing disbelief. Her crystalline body hummed with confusion, a sound her species made when confronted with the impossible. She had examined thousands of beings from hundreds of species across her long career. She had never seen anything like the human before her. "This cannot be correct," Salix said, checking her instruments for the third time. "The readings show that your cells exist in multiple quantum states simultaneously. Your neural pathways exhibit quantum entanglement across impossible distances. According to our understanding of biology, you should not be able to think, move, or even exist." Chen smiled that same unsettling smile she had worn on the Prometheus. "Your understanding is limited to this region of space. Out there, beyond the rim, the rules are different. Or perhaps they are simply more flexible than you believe." "What happened to you?" Valrus asked from her observation position above the chamber. The Valexian ambassador had not left the station since Chen's arrival, driven by a need to understand that bordered on obsession. "What happened to all of humanity?" Chen stood, and though the gesture was simple, every sensor in the room screamed warnings. Her movement through space created ripples that instruments could detect but not explain, as if she was disturbing a fabric that others could not see. "After the council rejected us," Chen began, her voice carrying the weight of centuries, "humanity debated our future. Some wanted to stay, to beg for membership and acceptance. Others wanted to wage war, to take by force what we felt we deserved. But the majority chose a different path. We decided to leave, to venture beyond the known galaxy and find our own way among the stars." She walked to the window that overlooked Zenith Prime, her reflection overlaying the planet below. "We took our ships and our dreams and we flew toward the galactic rim. We passed the last mapped star systems. We ventured into regions your charts mark as void beyond or here be monsters. We flew for decades into the darkness, our generation ships carrying millions into the unknown." "And what did you find?" Felris pressed. "We found that we were not alone in the deep black," Chen said softly. "We found structures, Ambassador. Stations and citadels built by civilizations so ancient that they make your oldest empires look like children playing in sand. We found technology that does not simply use physics but rewrites it. We found machines that think in dimensions we cannot perceive. And we found knowledge that changed us fundamentally and forever." Commander Thrak growled from his position by the door. "You speak in riddles, human? What is your purpose here? Why return after so long?" Chen turned from the window and her mirror eyes fixed on the Kroll warrior. "I returned to warn you. Something is waking in the galaxy's core. We call them the Devourers, though they have many names in the ancient texts we found. They are older than any current civilization, perhaps older than life itself. They sleep in cycles that span millions of years, but when they wake, they consume everything in their path." "Another threat?" Quorum scoffed from his monitoring station. "The galaxy faces dangers every century. We have navies, weapons, shields. We have survived worse than your nightmares." "Have you?" Chen asked, and there was genuine curiosity in her voice. "Show me your greatest weapon." The council representatives exchanged glances. Finally, Velrus nodded. Security protocols were adjusted, and a hologram appeared showing the council's newest dreadnought-class vessel. It was a magnificent ship, 5 kilometers long, armed with plasma cannons that could glass a planet, protected by shields that could withstand a star's heat. Chen studied it for a moment, then shook her head. This would not even slow them down. The Devourers do not fight with weapons as you understand them. They do not conquer. They erase. They reduce complex matter back to its fundamental elements. Planets with billions of inhabitants become clouds of hydrogen and helium. Stars are extinguished. Entire civilizations vanish as if they never existed. Impossible, Thrak declared. Nothing has that kind of power. Then let me show you, Chen said. She raised her hand and the air in the chamber began to shift. Atoms rearranged themselves at her unspoken command. Matter that had been air became solid, forming into a perfect sphere of metal that floated before her. She gestured again and the metal sphere ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not disintegrated, but simply removed from reality as if it had never been there at all. Every alarm in the station shrieked. Scientists scrambled to understand what they had witnessed. Security forces burst into the room with weapons drawn, only to stop in confusion when they saw nothing threatening except a human woman standing calmly in the center of the chamber. We did not find weapons in the darkness, Chen explained into the chaos. We found something better and more terrible. We found the ability to create them from nothing, to unmake them at will. We found the fundamental codes of reality itself, and we learned to rewrite them. She walked toward Velrus, and the ambassador fought the instinct to step back. Humanity paid a price for this knowledge. We changed, evolved, transformed into something that can survive in the deep places between galaxies. We are no longer entirely the species that left your borders centuries ago, but we are not your enemy. Then what are you? Velrus whispered. We are what becomes necessary, Chen answered. We are what evolution creates when a species refuses to die. We are survivors who learn to thrive in the darkness, and now we have returned because the Devourers are waking and this galaxy will need us. She moved to the center of the chamber again. You can keep me here, study me, question me. It will not change what is coming, or you can listen to my warning and prepare. The choice is yours. And how long do we have? Dr. Salix asked quietly. Chen's expression became grave. The first attacks have already begun. 3 Kroll colony worlds on the outer rim. You have not heard from them yet because the Devourers leave nothing behind to send warnings. No survivors, no wreckage, no evidence except empty space where life once flourished. Thrak's combat computer chirped an alert. His expression changed as he read the incoming message, shock replacing his warrior's certainty. She speaks truth. Communications have been lost with 3 frontier colonies. Ships dispatched to investigate have not reported back. The chamber fell silent. Outside the window, Zenith Prime turned peacefully in space, its billions of inhabitants unaware that their galaxy was about to change forever. The Kroll colony of Tharic's Rest had been home to 16 million souls. It orbited a young yellow star, its 3 moons providing tidal forces that made the oceans rich with life. The Kroll had settled there 2 centuries ago, building vast cities that mixed traditional warrior architecture with modern technology. It had been a jewel of the frontier, a symbol of Kroll expansion and prosperity. Now it was nothing but dust. Admiral Korvac stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the sensor readings with disbelief that slowly transformed into horror. His fleet of 30 warships had arrived expecting to find technical difficulties or perhaps pirate raiders. Instead, they found a graveyard. Tharic's Rest still existed as a planetary body, but everything on it was gone. The cities, the oceans, the atmosphere, the billions of tons of processed metals and constructed materials, all of it had been reduced to basic elements. What remained was a barren rock covered in a thin layer of hydrogen, helium, and carbon dust. Even the complex minerals in the planet's crust had been simplified, broken down to their fundamental atomic components. Scan for survivors, Korvax ordered, though his voice carried no hope. Negative on all channels, his sensor officer reported. No life signs, no power signatures, no communications. The planet has been stripped of anything more complex than simple molecules. 2 more Kroll worlds reported the same fate within the hour. Then the enemy arrived. They came from nowhere, appearing in space without the usual distortions of faster-than-light travel. The vessels, if they could be called that, hurt to look at directly. Their shapes seemed to shift and change, existing in geometries that did not belong in normal space. They were impossibly large and impossibly small at the same time. their dimensions refusing to make sense to any scanner or observer. "Battle stations," Korvax roared, and his fleet responded with the precision of trained warriors. 30 warships formed defensive formations, their weapons charging, their shields activating at maximum power. The Kroll opened fire first. Plasma cannons that could melt through starship armor hit the nearest Devourer vessel. The energy simply vanished upon contact, absorbed or negated without any visible effect. Missile barrages that could level cities passed through the enemy ships as if they were ghosts. Particle beams, kinetic weapons, electromagnetic pulses, nothing worked. Then the Devourers responded. What happened next could not accurately be called an attack. The enemy vessels did not fire weapons or launch fighters. They simply existed near the Kroll ships, and that proximity was enough. Reality around the warships began to break down. Hulls that had withstood meteor impacts and energy blasts dissolved into component atoms. Shields designed to turn aside stars' fury flickered and died as the fundamental forces holding them together were unmade. Kroll warriors, the finest fighters in the galaxy, found their bodies coming apart at the molecular level even as they screamed defiance. 5 ships died in the first minute, 10 more in the second. Admiral Korvax ordered a retreat, but faster-than-light drives would not engage near the Devourer vessels. Space itself was too damaged, too changed by their presence to allow normal physics to function. The emergency distress call went out on all frequencies, a desperate scream into the void. Then Korvax's flagship began to dissolve, starting at the bow and working backward like a ship sinking in invisible water. The Admiral stood on his bridge, watching death approach with the calm acceptance of a true warrior, and wondered if this was how his species would end. A new ship appeared. The Prometheus emerged from a fold in space that opened like a flower blooming. It was small compared to the massive Devourer vessels, but its presence changed everything. The distortions in reality that prevented the Kroll ships from escaping suddenly stabilized. The inexorable advance of the Devourers paused as if they had noticed something new and potentially dangerous. Captain Chen's voice came over the emergency channels, clear and calm. "Kroll vessels, this is the Prometheus. Maintain your positions. We will handle the threat." "Human ship, you cannot fight these things," Korvax transmitted from his dying vessel, parts of the bridge already fading into elementary particles around him. "Save yourselves. Run while you can." "We do not run anymore," Chen replied. "We learned that lesson centuries ago." The Prometheus moved, and its movement was unlike any ship the Kroll had ever seen. It did not accelerate or turn. It simply existed in one location and then existed in another, as if the space between had been edited out of reality. It positioned itself between the Devourers and the remaining Kroll vessels. What the human ship did next would be debated and analyzed for generations to come. It did not fire conventional weapons. No beams lanced out, no missiles were launched. Instead, space around the Devourer vessels changed. The geometry of reality itself was rewritten according to rules that the human ship commanded. The first Devourer vessel simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not exploded, but removed from reality as completely as if it had never been there. The probability of its existence was reduced to 0. Its timeline threads cut by forces that operated outside normal causality. The second Devourer tried to flee, vanishing from normal space. The Prometheus followed, punching through dimensional barriers that should have been impassable. There was a brief flicker of impossible colors, a sound that was more felt than heard, and then the Prometheus returned alone. 3 more Devourer vessels attempted to coordinate an attack on the human ship. Chen responded by creating localized pockets of altered physics around each one. In those pockets, the fundamental forces that held matter together were adjusted. Strong nuclear forces weakened. Electromagnetic bonds changed polarity. Gravity inverted and multiplied. The Devourer vessels collapsed into themselves, crushed by forces they could not resist or escape. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than 5 minutes. When it was over, 8 Devourer vessels had been eliminated, and the remaining enemy forces had retreated. The damaged Kroll fleet floated in space, saved from certain destruction by weapons and abilities they could not comprehend. Chen's face appeared on Admiral Korvax's emergency screens. Behind her, the bridge of the Prometheus glowed with displays that showed equations and symbols that meant nothing to the Kroll. Admiral, I am sorry we did not arrive sooner. We were monitoring the border worlds, but we did not expect the Devourers to strike so quickly or in such force. Korvax looked at the human woman, at her strange mirror eyes and her too calm expression, and felt a chill that had nothing to do with his ship's failing life support. What are you? What has humanity become? Chen's expression softened slightly. We are what we needed to be to survive, Admiral. Nothing more, nothing less. The question now is whether we can teach others to survive as well, or if we must fight alone. The Council will want answers, Korvax said. Yes, Chen agreed. They will, and they will not like what they hear. But the time for comfortable lies has passed. The Devourers are awake and the galaxy must face the truth. Some threats cannot be defeated with courage and honor alone. Sometimes you need to become something that can create weapons beyond understanding. The Prometheus began to move away, preparing to fold space around itself again. Return to Zenith Prime, Admiral. Tell them what you saw here. Tell them that humanity has returned, and we are not what they remember. Tell them the war has already begun and they must choose whether to stand with us or fall alone. The human ship vanished, leaving the Kroll fleet alone among the ruins of their colonies. Korvax looked out at the dead world of Therix Rest and knew that everything had changed. The galaxy would never be the same again. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened with a speed that would have been unthinkable under normal circumstances. Representatives from every member species crowded into the Great Hall on Zenith Prime, their voices raised in fear, anger, and confusion. The images from the Kroll frontier had spread throughout the galaxy. Grainy recordings of ships that defied physics and a human vessel that fought with weapons that rewrote reality itself. Ambassador Velrus called for order repeatedly before the hall finally quieted. We have all seen the reports from Admiral Korvax. 3 colony worlds destroyed, millions dead, and an enemy that our weapons cannot harm. Captain Chen warned us this would happen. The question now is, what do we do about it? We must mobilize the full might of the Council fleet, Commander Thrak insisted, his honor still wounded by the loss of Kroll colonies. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier. We face these Devourers with everything we have. To what end? Chen's voice came from the entrance to the hall. She walked forward with deliberate steps, her presence causing a ripple of unease through the assembled representatives. Your weapons do not work against them. Your shields cannot stop them. Your ships are helpless before technology that operates on principles you do not understand. Then what do you suggest, human? The Valexian Empress herself had attended this session, her ancient form supported by anti-gravity fields. That we surrender? That we flee? That we beg you to save us? No, Chen said simply. I suggest you accept help when it is offered. I suggest you acknowledge that you are not the most advanced civilization in this galaxy anymore. I suggest you adapt or die. She reached the center of the hall and stopped. The Prometheus was only a scout vessel, Your Majesty. One ship sent ahead to test if the galaxy remembered humanity, to see if returning was even possible. But we are not alone anymore. Chen looked up at the domed ceiling of the Great Hall, and as she did, every display and window in the chamber activated. Outside, in the space above Zenith Prime, something was happening. Fold space ruptures opened like flowers blooming in a garden. 1, then 5, then 20, then more. Human ships emerged from impossible angles, arriving from places that should not have existed. They came in sizes that ranged from small corvettes to massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed the largest council vessels. Each one bore the mark of profound transformation. Hulls made of materials that seemed alive, engines that glowed with impossible colors, weapons that looked more like sculptures than instruments of war. Dozens of ships appeared, then hundreds. They filled the space around Zenith Prime in formations that were both beautiful and terrifying. The combined fleet of humanity, returned from 8 centuries in the darkness, arrived to change the fate of the galaxy. The council representatives watched in stunned silence. They had expected a handful of ships, perhaps a small fleet if they were lucky. This was an armada that could challenge the combined forces of every council species. And worse, it was clear that these vessels operated on principles that the current galactic civilizations could not match. This is Admiral Marcus Webb of the United Earth Space Command, a voice announced over all channels. We come in response to Captain Chen's call. We come to offer alliance against a mutual enemy. We come in peace, but we come prepared for war. A new figure materialized on the central platform beside Chen, using technology that made the Council's best transportation systems look primitive. Admiral Webb was tall and lean, wearing a uniform similar to Chen's but marked with decades of service. His face was young, no older than 30 standard years, but his eyes held the weight of centuries. He had been a child when humanity left the galaxy. Now he commanded a fleet that could reshape it. Members of the Galactic Council, Webb said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had witnessed empires rise and fall. 800 years ago, you rejected humanity's application for membership. You called us primitive, aggressive, unsuited for civilization among the stars. You are not entirely wrong. The humans who left your borders were flawed, dangerous, and unpredictable. He paused, letting his words sink in. But the humans who have returned are something new. We have seen wonders and horrors that you cannot imagine. We have ventured to the edge of the universe and peered into the void between galaxies. We have found ancient civilizations that make yours look young, and we have learned from them. We have changed, evolved, transformed ourselves into something that can survive in places where life should not exist. And what exactly have you become? Quorum asked, his voice shaking slightly. We are post-human, Chen answered. Some of us have merged our consciousness with artificial intelligences, becoming hybrid beings that think in multiple streams simultaneously. Others have bonded with exotic matter, our bodies existing partially in dimensions you cannot perceive. Some have learned to manipulate the quantum foam that underlies reality, reshaping matter and energy at will. We are no longer limited by biological evolution. We direct our own transformation. The Ashanti representative, a crystal being named Harmonix, chimed a question that resonated through the hall. What is the price of such power? What did you sacrifice? Admiral Webb's expression grew solemn. Everything that made us weak. Our short lifespans have been extended indefinitely through medical advances and consciousness transfer. Our need for planets and atmosphere has been eliminated through biological modifications. Our dependence on traditional physics has been overcome through understanding of reality's deeper structures. And what of your humanity? Empress Velris asked softly. What of compassion, empathy, the bonds of family and friendship? Did you sacrifice those as well in your quest for power? Webb met her gaze steadily. We changed them. We did not eliminate them. Some of us still feel emotions in ways you would recognize. Others experience them differently, as patterns of logic or fluctuations in quantum states. But we still value life, still protect the weak, still honor our dead. We are different, but we are not monsters. How can we trust you? Thrak demanded. You come with overwhelming force, with weapons we cannot match, with abilities we cannot comprehend. How do we know you will not enslave us as easily as you offer to protect us? It was a fair question, and Chen did not shy away from it. You cannot know for certain. Trust must be earned, and we have been gone for a long time. But consider this. If we wanted to conquer the galaxy, we could have done so already. If we wanted to impose our will, we would not be standing here asking for alliance. We would simply act. She gestured to the ships filling the space outside. We offer partnership, not domination. We will fight the Devourers whether you stand with us or not. But if we fight together, if we share knowledge and coordinate our efforts, more of you will survive. More worlds will be saved. More civilizations will endure. What do you want in return? Velris asked, always the diplomat. Access to your industrial capacity, Webb answered. Your worlds can produce resources and manufacture equipment faster than our mobile fleets can. We need raw materials, construction facilities, and logistics support. In return, we will share some of our knowledge, teach you how to defend yourselves better, and show you paths of advancement that do not require you to become what we have become. Some knowledge? Quorum challenged. Not all? Not all, Webb confirmed without apology. Some of what we learned in the deep black is too dangerous to share freely. Some knowledge transforms those who possess it in ways that cannot be undone. We will not force that burden on species who are not ready. The council chamber erupted in debate. Some representatives saw the offer as a chance for survival. Others saw it as a trap, a way for humanity to establish dominance through controlled information. Still others questioned whether any alliance with beings so changed could be maintained. As the arguments raged, Chen and Webb stood silently in the center, waiting. They had learned patience in their centuries of wandering. They could wait a little longer for the galaxy to make its choice. Outside, the human fleet maintained position, neither threatening nor retreating. They were a promise and a warning, a demonstration of what was possible and what was necessary. The galaxy had changed in humanity's absence, but humanity had changed even more. The question was whether the two could find common ground before the Devourers consumed everything. The combined fleet assembled at the Nexus Point, a region of space equidistant from all major Council worlds. Over 5,000 vessels filled the darkness, the largest military force ever gathered in galactic history. 2/3 were Council ships, Krull battle cruisers, Valexian carriers, Ashanti crystalline destroyers, and hundreds of support craft from dozens of species. The remaining third were human vessels, fewer in number but far more advanced, each one worth 10 or more conventional warships in capability. Admiral Webb stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Indomitable Will, watching the fleet organize itself through displays that showed information in formats the Council species could barely comprehend. Beside him, Captain Chen reviewed tactical data streaming in from scouts positioned around the galaxy's core region. "The Devourers are massing," Chen reported, her mirror eyes reflecting patterns only she could fully perceive. "Our analysis suggests they are preparing a major offensive. If they attack in force, they could sweep through a dozen core worlds before we could respond. Then we do not wait for them," Webb decided. "We take the fight to their nest." The decision had been made weeks ago during strategy sessions that had tested the patience of all involved. Council military leaders wanted to establish defensive positions and wait for the enemy. Human commanders argued for aggressive action, striking at the source before the Devourers could fully wake. In the end, necessity and desperation had won. The galaxy could not afford a defensive war against an enemy that could erase planets. The fleet jumped toward the galactic core in waves, each group of ships escorted by human vessels that could navigate the dangerous regions of compressed spacetime that surrounded the center of the galaxy. They traveled through regions where stars were packed so densely that their gravity wells overlapped, creating areas where physics became strange and unpredictable. For 3 weeks they journeyed inward, past ancient civilizations that had retreated from the galaxy's edge billions of years ago, past neutron stars and black holes, past clouds of exotic matter that glowed with impossible colors. The Council ships struggled in these conditions, their crews suffering from temporal distortions and gravitational stress. The human vessels moved effortlessly, their altered nature allowing them to exist comfortably in environments that would kill unmodified life. Finally, they reached the Devourer's nest. It was not a planet or a station. It was a structure that had been built into the fabric of spacetime itself, a wound in reality that stretched for light years. The nest existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that instruments could detect, but not fully measure. It pulsed with energy that matched no known source, and from it emerged the Devourer vessels in a stream that seemed endless. "Mother of Stars," Empress Velrys whispered from the Council command ship. She had insisted on accompanying the fleet despite her age, claiming that a leader who would not risk death alongside her warriors had no right to command them. "How many are there?" "Thousands," Chen answered from her position on the Prometheus. "Perhaps tens of thousands. The nest is producing them constantly, drawing energy from the supermassive black hole at the galaxy's exact center. They have been sleeping for millennia, but now they wake to fulfill their purpose, which is?" Commander Thrak growled. "Cleaning," Admiral Webb said grimly. "Our studies of the ancient texts we found in the deep black revealed the truth. The Devourers were created millions of years ago by a civilization we call the Architects. Their purpose was to reset regions of space where life had become too advanced, where consciousness and technology had begun to damage the fundamental structure of reality itself. So they are weapons," Velrys said. "Tools of genocide created by beings long dead. Tools that continue to function," Chen confirmed. "The Architects are gone, extinct or ascended or simply departed this galaxy. But their creations remain, following their programming, waking periodically to eliminate civilizations that reach a certain threshold of advancement." "Then we are doomed," Quorum said from his station. "If the Architects were advanced enough to create such weapons, how can we hope to fight them?" Webb smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Because we found the Architects' failures as well as their successes. We found their abandoned citadels and research stations. We found their warning messages and their desperate last attempts to control what they had created. The Devourers were meant to be controllable, But the architects lost that control. That is what destroyed them. But you found the control mechanisms, Velra said, understanding dawning. In the deep black, you found how the architects attempted to stop their own creations. We found something better, Chen said. She reached into her uniform and withdrew a device no larger than her hand. It glowed with internal light that seemed to come from somewhere else, shining through the object rather than from it. We found the ability to negotiate. The battle began before she could explain further. The Devourers had detected the fleet and they responded with overwhelming force. Hundreds of their vessels emerged from the nest, moving in patterns that showed coordination beyond individual intelligence. They were a swarm, a hive, a distributed consciousness that treated each ship as a cell in a larger organism. The Council fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy weapons, kinetic rounds, nuclear missiles, exotic particle beams. Every weapon known to galactic civilization poured into the enemy. Some attacks worked better than others. The Devourers could not completely ignore concentrated plasma fire or antimatter warheads. They could be damaged, even destroyed, but it took enormous amounts of firepower to eliminate each vessel. The human fleet fought differently. They created zones of altered physics around enemy ships, pockets where the laws of nature were rewritten. In some areas, time moved at different rates, causing Devourer vessels to age millions of years in seconds, their hulls crumbling to dust. In others, gravity reversed or multiplied, crushing ships under forces they could not resist. Some human vessels fired weapons that were not projectiles at all, but probability manipulations, reducing the chance of enemy existence to near zero. But there were too many Devourers, and they learned quickly. They adapted to tactics, adjusted their formations, found ways to partially resist even the human weapons. For every enemy ship destroyed, 2 more emerged from the nest. The battle was turning into a war of attrition that the combined fleet could not win. Time to end this, Chen said. She turned to Admiral Webb. I need a strike team. 5 human vessels and volunteers from the Council fleet. We are going into the nest. That is suicide, Thrak protested. Probably, Chen agreed, but it is necessary. The device I carry must be delivered to the heart of the nest, to the central consciousness that coordinates the Devourers. It cannot be launched or transmitted. It must be placed by hand by a thinking being who can demonstrate understanding. Volunteers came forward immediately, Krull warriors who saw the chance for an honorable death, Ashanti scholars who wanted to see the ancient technology firsthand, Valexian pilots who believed in the cause. Dozens offered, but only 20 were chosen. The strike force punched through the Devourer swarm using tactics that combined human reality manipulation with Council firepower. They suffered losses, ships dissolving or being torn apart by enemy weapons that operated on principles beyond understanding. But they reached the nest, diving into the wound in space-time that served as its entrance. Inside, physics went mad. Up and down lost meaning. Time flowed in multiple directions simultaneously. The strike team found themselves navigating through corridors that existed in 5 dimensions, past machines that seemed to be built from crystallized laws of nature itself. They fought past Devourer defenders that materialized from the walls, that existed in multiple locations at once, that could not be killed because they were not entirely alive in any conventional sense. Captain Chen led them deeper, following a path that her altered senses could perceive but not explain. She moved through the impossible geometry like she belonged there, her body existing comfortably in spaces that made the others bleed from their sensory organs. They reached the core, a chamber that was impossibly vast and impossibly small, where the central intelligence of the Devourer swarm resided. It was not a computer or a brain. It was a living equation, a self-aware mathematical truth that existed as pure information embedded in the structure of space-time itself. Chen stepped forward alone, carrying the device. The Devourer intelligence focused on her, and the weight of its attention nearly crushed her mind even in her altered state. It spoke not in words but in concepts that bypassed language entirely. Why do you resist? You are corruption. You damage reality. You must be cleansed. We damage it by existing, Chen agreed, speaking thoughts rather than words. All consciousness does. All life creates complexity that strains the fabric of space-time. The architects created you to prevent that damage, to reset the galaxy periodically and start fresh. Yes, we fulfill our purpose. But the architects failed, Chen continued. They created you and you became the very thing they feared. You consumed them. You exceeded your programming. You damaged reality more than any biological civilization ever could. The intelligence paused, processing,